You are listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
Hey, this is Michael from Arcane Carolinas. Just wanted to let you know the episode you're about to hear is the audio from a video presentation that we made for DragonCon Goes Virtual this year. Just want to say thanks again to the American Sci-Fi Classics track at DragonCon for having us. It was a real pleasure. We were really excited to be there, and we really enjoyed talking about these topics. There are a couple of times in the video where we make visual jokes that may or may not translate into audio, but if you want to watch the video instead of listening to the audio, there's a link in the show notes. So you can go to YouTube and watch it along with everybody else. Also, in this episode, we offer to send stickers to anybody who emails us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com, and that offer still stands as of this recording. So if you want a sticker, drop us a line, give us your address, and we'll be happy to send you one. Also, if there are topics like this, anything that falls under the Arcane Carolinas umbrella, cryptids, monsters, legends, lore, the supernatural, the paranormal, that you know of from somewhere in the Carolinas that you would love for someone else like us to research and talk about on the show, drop us a line, give us the suggestion. We'll be happy to look into it. We've got a lot of ideas, but we're always open to new ones, and we want to talk about what you want to hear us talk about. And again, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy the episode.
So you are watching Arcane Carolinas at DragonCon. Normally, we're a traditional podcast audio only, but for today, we're doing video too.
Yeah, welcome to DragonCon Goes Virtual and the American Sci-Fi Classics track. My name is Michael G. Williams. I am the winner of the 2020 Manly Wade Wellman Award, and in a normal DragonCon, I'm an attending professional as a writer.
My name is Charlie Mushaw, and I am experiencing DragonCon for the first time. I'm really excited about that. Happy to be here. And in fact, we have something special to celebrate DragonCon this year. We normally would have brought a whole backpack full of crap to give out stickers, buttons, pins, that sort of stuff. We made special DragonCon exclusive enamel pins. And the first 5 people to email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com, or you can go to arcanecarolinas.com. Drop us a note. Tell us you checked us out at DragonCon. And if you're in the first 5, you'll get a DragonCon exclusive enamel pin. And if you're not in those first 5, we'll still send you some other stuff too, stickers and whatnot.
And if you want to check out any of my books, feel free to go to www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com or falstaffbooks.com. Falstaff Books is my publisher.
So normally an Arcane Carolinas episode format is an exploration of something, a legend, myth, or modern weird out of the Carolinas. Today, again, since we're celebrating DragonCon, we are going to branch out into Georgia as well. So we're going to have a cryptid from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia.
I think technically this is my 10th DragonCon. I think that everybody who's ever been to DragonCon knows there's a lot of weird stuff in Georgia. It's just we experience it as DragonCon.
Hold on, let me say hi to my cousins in Georgia. Hey, guys, he's not talking about you. I am, but he's not.
I have a lot of relatives in Georgia also, and I am talking about my family when I say weird stuff in Georgia.
So the way it normally works is we do an hour-long exploration of a single topic. Obviously, in this circumstance, we want to relate the content to science fiction. So we're going to cover 3 different monsters very quickly and relate them to their pop culture representations.
Yeah, go ahead. Dive in.
I will dive in to the Lake Norman monster.
That was totally by accident. I do say that a lot, but this is a perfect use of it also.
So Lake Norman is an artificial lake constructed by the Duke Power Company between 1959 and 1964 in North Carolina. It's got 520 miles of shore length, a maximum depth of 112 feet, several sunken towns, 1 sunken airplane at least that we know about, several years of UFO sightings near its nuclear power plant, many ghost stories, confirmed irradiated groundwater, and Normie, the Lake Norman monster.
I have a lot of questions for you about the sunken airplane, about how many sunken towns, about how many UFO sightings, and about how irradiated. And that's before we even get to the lake monster part.
Right? It's one of my favorite settings for North Carolina weird. It's kind of like Godzilla, right? It's like the man-made issue that like humankind has brought this upon themselves. Like all of these problems are brought on through conscious decision. So we will probably do a full-length episode just on Lake Norman. We could do a whole series on Lake Norman. But today, we're going to talk about the Lake Norman monster.
Great.
Okay. So descriptions of the monster generally focus on size. It was huge. It was gigantic. It had fins. It had scales. It broke the surface. I've never seen anything so big. What's really important to note about the Lake Norman monster is the descriptions don't line up with the sort of classic plesiosaurus body shape, like the Loch Ness monster, like little head on a long neck kind of thing.
Okay, so it doesn't look like a brontosaurus out of Fred Flintstone.
Correct. The descriptions are generally, it was a gigantic, literally monstrous fish.
So it's like fish-shaped and everything.
Yep. There are a little more details, and we'll get into that. One thing that's also important to note is that it has been cited by reputable witnesses repeatedly. The Army Corps of Engineers sends divers down to inspect the dam there for, infrastructure checks, which you need to do periodically. Army Corps of Engineer divers have reported seeing enormously large fish near the dam. One diver reported on the official Lake Norman monster sighting website that they saw a fish with a mouth 3 feet wide. So just the mouth was 3 feet wide.
So like a whole yard or a meter.
Yes.
Just the mouth.
Just the mouth. He did not know the length because it was hanging out in an abandoned house in part of a sunken town. So the fish had just made this human-sized house its home.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I have never wanted to go scuba diving in my entire life, and now I want to go scuba diving once.
Apparently just sat there just kind of like blub, 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 blub. And he was like, that's a big fish. And slowly swam away and was like, I'm done here.
Yeah, like at the bottom of artificial lakes especially, the surface tends to be like really muddy and murky.
Mm-hmm.
And so I imagine that in order to have seen this 3 foot wide mouth, he had to get pretty close to it, which is exceptionally distressing. It's not like he saw it from across the abandoned underwater yard. It's that he was like right up on it.
It was probably like... Except that it was blub, blub, blub.
Right.
So many, many sightings. A lot of comments tend towards, it's a big catfish. My favorite ones are, it's an irradiated mutant fish, like Blinky from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool. My personal theory is that it's a sturgeon, possibly irradiated. I'm not ruling that out. But a sturgeon is a lot spinier than catfish, which lines up with what I was going to say. We were going to get back to the descriptions. Some of the descriptions, more often than not, involve it had large scales and spines. And sturgeon have that characteristic. They also are known to break the surface of the water. They're generally just more prehistoric looking.
Okay.
And they're native to the Catawba River, which feeds the lake.
Oh, that's a pretty strong argument.
To be clear, I don't think this makes it any less cool. I think this is still an awesome legend.
I mean, it's circumstantial evidence, but it's the closest thing to a scientific argument that I've heard for pretty much any lake monster ever. There's a fish that everybody knows is native to the river that feeds this lake, and there's a lot of radiation around. Classic science fiction is chock full of that kind of thing.
And if there's ample food supply and no natural predators, right? These things can just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's entire television shows where the guy travels the world just discovering giant fish.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love the Lake Norman monster. I think it's fun. I think a lot of people have seen it, and I really like that story. And that's our first cryptid that we're going to cover. That one was out of North Carolina.
Well, let's talk about some science fiction examples of similar things. And I'm going to start with a movie that I really, really deeply love, which is Lake Placid.
My dad took the entire family to see Lake Placid when we were kids. I guess I was a teenager. I was not the age where we were taking family trips to the movies.
Yeah.
And he packed everybody in the car. He's like, we're going to the movies. He wanted to see it so bad. I love this movie. This has a very special place in my heart.
It was the first time that I experienced that Betty White had a really well-developed sense of herself. Obviously, I knew her from the Golden Girls and things like that. I had not anticipated seeing her in something like this. And to know that she was just like, yeah, no, I can definitely make the joke, be a part of the joke, depict the joke, everything about this.
It's a snow day movie in my house.
Really?
Yeah, you know how you have like snow day movies that when you know, like, oh, we're going to be stuck inside. That actually comes from my wife because she apparently had a snow day many, many years ago. And there was like a Lake Placid marathon because there's been sequels.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
It was like, yeah, we just sat and watched them all.
We've all been there. There's nothing wrong with that. Another one, it's not American and it's not technically old enough to be in the classic sci-fi track, but there's The Host from Bong Joon-ho, the director of Parasite, 2006 big chemically produced water/river monster movie that I went to go see at a horror film festival here in North Carolina thinking it was going to be just a creature feature, and it turns out it's like 7 different movies packed together into one movie in a way that actually like interlocks rather than confusing itself. So good. Well worth watching if you've never seen it. Then there's The Crater Lake Monster.
Have not seen this one.
I don't recommend it. I mention it because it is regarded to be one of the worst monster movies ever made. It's from 1977.
Yes.
It's set in Northern California. It's about a Nessie-style, like, plesiosaur creature coming after the principals in the cast. However, they're not talking about Crater Lake in Oregon. They're talking about a much smaller lake in Northern California, which also has the name Crater Lake. It's not even retail Crater Lake. It's like bargain basement Crater Lake.
Are you from Hollywood? Oh, you mean Florida?
Exactly. It is bad. And it tries really hard to like have some hard-hitting emotional content, all of which is completely derailed by everything regarding the quality of the filmmaking involved. It is not a good film.
So I already said I haven't seen it, but the 70s are such a ripe time for horrible movies like that.
Oh, 100%.
In my head, I'm already playing out what it would be like.
I don't think this one has been done by MST3K. And if it has not, then it needs to be. It's that sort of bad. It is eminently capable of being made fun of. And that's why I'm really recommending it. If you want to pour a couple of beverages and hang out with some friends in the times when we can do that again.
In the after times. Now we're doing our own sci-fi post-apocalyptic.
When we and Mad Max and that kid from the second Mad Max movie are hanging out watching...
I don't want to hang out with that kid.
No. Watching movies in the after times, then this would be a great movie to watch and just make fun of.
Awesome.
And then we always like to cover some sort of Native American legend or something because we're talking about cryptids in the Southeast. A Native American legend, Uktena. This is a Cherokee legend from Western North Carolina. The Little Men, which are kind of the Native American equivalent of the Fae folk, in this legend, they turned a specific guy into this giant horned snake so that he could kill the sun. And then he messed up and didn't kill the sun. Then Rattlesnake, one of their mythical pantheonic figures, did it for him, and he got really mad because he had been shown up that way. Then he had to be put, quote, in the high places, which means moved way up into the tall mountains. But he is said to haunt the rivers, including the Catawba River, and his offspring are said to have spread throughout the waters of the rivers and become dangers to all people.
Normie wouldn't hurt anybody.
I don't know. I've got a feeling that if you're living in a reclaimed, abandoned house at the bottom of a lake and you've got a mouth 3 feet wide, and you sneak up on divers, the odds are pretty good you might hurt people.
The diver came to the fish. The fish didn't come to the diver.
Yeah, but I bet he could have called out or something. You know, hey, I'm
You said
here.
reclaimed. I was just imagining the interest rates on a mortgage that a fish would get for his underwater house.
Do you want to forge ahead with South Carolina?
Yeah, this one is widely known. It is the Lizard Man of Scape Ore Swamp out of Lee County, South Carolina.
I had never heard of this until you mentioned it to me.
It has gotten national media coverage on more than one occasion.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you.
No, this is what we do. If this is your first introduction to Arcane Carolinas, there's a lot of this.
There is a degree to which it is basically just an hour of me apologizing for engaging in conversation.
I'm sorry I talked to you.
This is what happens when introverts try to entertain.
So in July of 1988, Tom and Mary Way placed a call into Lee County Sheriff Liston Truesdale. They stated that their car had been, quote, chewed up. In Truesdale's account, he observed a Ford sedan that had sustained damage involving what appeared to be tooth marks and had parts of its chrome trim forcibly removed. Now, there's a lot of information available about this, like firsthand quotes. In his own words, I knew right away whatever did it was stronger than me. My deputy and I tried pulling on that chrome ourselves and we couldn't even wiggle it. I can hear in my head like what he would sound like.
Totally. That is a very country way of putting it. And I have in my head this image of him and his deputy, and they look roughly like the sheriff and deputy out of whichever one of the Cannonball Run movies has a sheriff and deputy.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And they're like at the back of this car, just like jiggling that fender, seeing what can happen.
I can't wiggle it. So, being a good sheriff, he began to comb for witnesses and leads, and he got statements from someone named George Holloman, who stated that a large beast had chased him and a friend from the nearby swamp. Other witnesses said that multiple neighbors had been reporting a strange creature. Now, I find that quote to be interesting because witnesses stated neighbors, so like secondhand. So, this point is kind of like, my buddy told me he saw something weird. And after hearing this, a 17-year-old named Christopher Davis reported to the sheriff that his car had been damaged similarly, but he hadn't wanted to talk about it due to what he saw and thought people would think he was crazy. He claimed the damage to his car was committed, whatever word you want to say. Perpetrated by a creature that he described in the Associated Press wire service as having rough green skin, red glowing eyes, and stood about 7 feet tall.
That's a big critter.
That is a giant lizard man. According to Davis, he was driving home from work. His car got a flat tire near the edge of the swamp. He finished fixing the tire, and he saw a creature walking towards him from across a field or out of the woods. Got conflicting reports on that. Some of them said like, he was walking across a field. And other ones were like, it was coming out of the woods. Davis gets in his car, freaked out, understandably, begins to drive. And the creature really fast, like Terminator 2 style, like closes the gap, jumps on top of the car and starts like tearing on the car. So he hit his brakes and the creature goes flying off the top. And then he drove away and was really scared and didn't know what to make of it all.
This is some amazing action film lizard man spotting. That's
so
primo.
This hit the Associated Press. Like this was big news.
Yeah.
Word spreads. So do reports of sightings. Notably, one report involved 4 witnesses claiming to have seen a creature about 7 feet tall with glowing eyes jump a security fence on the side of Interstate 20.
4 witnesses. Were they together?
That part wasn't clear.
Okay.
What is clear is that Sheriff's Deputy Wayne Atkinson took a report and in his own words stated, I've been in law enforcement for 10 years, which is long enough to know when people are faking being scared, and this was real. So they convinced the deputy to take a report based on their behaviors. So that says something to me.
I'm not going to claim that I've never tried to convince a deputy of something. And I'm not going to claim that I've never succeeded at convincing a deputy of something. But I am going to say that generally speaking, I would expect that people in the line of work of deputy in the sort of place where folks report seeing 7-foot-tall lizard men probably have heard a lot of stories and probably do know how to sniff out the difference between what's real and what's not.
Maybe it was a local theater group and they were just really good actors.
Yes, this is the most talented rural community theater ever.
You want to come see our improv show? We're going to go trick the deputy. Yes, and so at this point, like it's on, full on explosion of attention, Lizard Man merchandise in the local shops, radio contests, newspaper contest, a massive influx of would-be monster hunters to the area, kind of like with the Beast of Bladenboro.
Yeah, because when we talked about that, there were like more people hunting for the Beast of Bladenboro some nights than lived in the town.
Or Jaws. So, the thing is, the Beast of Bladenboro and this actually happened. Huge influx of people actually happened. And get your Lizard Man hat here. Get your Lizard Man hat.
Did the mayor of this town try to tell everyone that there's no Lizard Man? It's safe to go back into the swamp.
You can go swimming in the swamp again. It's fine. So things came to a head in August, though. An airman from Shaw Air Force Base named Kenneth Orr filed a police report. So he went to the cops and said, I shot it off of Route 15. And then it ran into the swamp. And they were like, okay, so airman, what gun did you shoot it with? Oh, this isn't registered to you. It's not hunting season. What were you doing out there? And he got in some trouble.
I feel like there's a lot about that part of the story that suggests that he did not carefully consider the lie he was about to tell.
Yes, so he recanted.
Oh, okay. So he made it clear that was not true.
Well, they threw the book at him. And at his arraignment, in a plea for mercy, he took his story back.
Oh, that's an interesting wrinkle, though.
Right? He pled for mercy. They took away some of the charges. Like, they threw the book at him. And some believe that the pressure on him was the reason before recanting that there was some sort of outside influence being like, look, you're going to say you made it up. Who knows? It's not the end of the story. So shortly after the shooting incident, a man reports an auto accident on Scape Ore Swamp Bridge. He said, I hit something that had an alligator face.
I just am imagining just like some person, but they're wearing like the horse head mask, only it's an alligator. They're just trying to get across the road, but their peripheral vision is totally blown from the mask.
It's the budget mask from Spirit Halloween from the one side of the store, not the nice side of the store, so it's all wobbly. The bottom jaw is just flapping open. Man, I don't even look like an alligator. He said he hit something with an alligator face and it jumped off the bridge and fell into the swamp. And all of this occurred, everything that we've talked about occurred during 1988. But shortly after the car accident, which was the accident we just talked about, which was immediately after the shooting incident, the stories just died.
Maybe it did die.
Until 2015.
Oh. No way.
When a new sighting was reported and quickly gained coverage in the news again.
Wow.
Stephen Colbert covered it. That one was...
He is from South Carolina.
We'll just say that one doesn't ring out the way the rest of the story does.
Okay. It doesn't even bear suffering the details.
No. But There is a quote from a book published in 2007 that spoke with Sheriff Truesdale in retirement. And he said about all of this, too many people saw something, but I still don't know what it was.
That's an interesting and open-minded take on it. I admire that take.
And the story's been covered on all the expected cable TV series. It's a bona fide legend in South Carolina. And most importantly of all, and worth mentioning, there is a festival/convention. There's a Lizard Man Con, and I really want to go.
That is amazing. And it is, like we were talking about this the other day, that is within the realm of reason for being a day drive from here.
I want to go. I'm in. So in the after times, I fully intend to go to the South Carolina Lizard Man Convention.
That would be a lot of fun. Some sci-fi examples of things like the Lizard Man. First up, when you said Lizard Man, I thought like the classic 1980s TV show and, TV miniseries, then followed by the TV show. We talked a lot in the American Sci-Fi Classics track about V last year and the year before because we were approaching like big anniversaries for V. And I got to see some really great panels at DragonCon where like the stars of V were on hand to like talk about what it was like to make the TV show. It was so much fun. V has always been one of my favorites. It was a real feat of practical effects in the 80s to have like these layers of mask on actors so that when something happened to tear the fake skin that one of the visitors was wearing, there would be the lizard skin underneath. They did really cool accomplishments with things like colored contact lenses. They did some really cool practical effects with the fact that the visitors like eat small mammals. So there are like scenes of them like eating rats and things. It is so creepy, so much fun. It is also all a very effective metaphor for fascism and dealing with what to do with an occupying power. That sort of stuff is written way throughout it. It is very explicit that this is a metaphor for fascism.
I remember that when I was a kid. I remember being freaked out by that.
It was a big deal in my childhood for sure. I'm going to let you talk about this one.
One of my favorite Lizard Men stories are the Slee Stacks from Land of the Lost, and my second favorite hat. Land of the Lost is so great with the lizard people and like the little cave boy, like, chaka, chaka, chaka. You've got your Sasquatch boy, you've got your lizard men. I just feel like that bears mentioning because they are definitely a pop culture classic sci-fi example of lizard people.
I actually thought of you the other day when I saw that somebody had made a meme starring Slee Stacks. And I was just like, oh my God, I've got to remember to show this to Charlie. Another great one, Enemy Mine, the classic science fiction movie of the 1980s. The alien species in that is known as the Drax because they look like lizard people. Another classic science fiction species, Star Trek, the Gorn.
Yes.
What a great episode where Kirk has to fight the Gorn.
It's so good.
It's so good. I love when the Gorn's like translated speech is, I will be swift and merciless. And it's just like, how did these people figure out warp drives? But okay, sure. I guess that was the goal. They wanted to be swift.
You just have a little checklist. We are swift. You've been a little less merciless this week. We're going to need to mark you half a point on that one.
Yeah, the Gorn have big signs up in their ships that say things like, it has been 87 days since the last incident of mercy. But also, it made me think of that when you were talking about the guy, the airman in South Carolina, saying that he shot the lizard man. I had this image of Captain Kirk when he makes his little cannon out of the like bamboo and stuff. And he shoots the Gorn, and then he like runs towards an alien deputy. I don't know.
Help!
A little more obscure from the world of Star Trek, from Star Trek Voyager, there's the Voth, who, if I remember correctly, are basically evolved Earth dinosaurs.
See, I don't know those ones.
Yeah, they've been around for so long and left Earth so long ago that they've like made it out to the part of the galaxy where Voyager takes place.
So their peanut brain is now like a walnut brain.
Yes, very much so. And then, of course, there are kobolds and dragonborn from D&D. And
kobolds are my favorite. I love kobolds.
Are you familiar with Pun Pun?
No.
During the era of, I think, 3.5.
Okay.
Somebody wrote an internet post somewhere, who knows, about Pun Pun, the super kobold. And what they did was work out all the like items. They worked out all the items and all the spells and everything else that you would need from the books. None of this is made up homebrew.
Mm-hmm.
In order to take a like bog standard kobold NPC and turn them into a god. And it does culminate in things like they have the leadership feed and they've got all the right gear and use the right spells and the right training books and things like that. And now they have like a charisma of 32 or something. And enough people are praying to them that they eventually achieve godhood. And that's what happens to Pun Pun. Pun Pun becomes the god kobold.
So diverging a little bit, it's not lizard people, but it's similar in that it makes me laugh. Magic the Gathering had a goblin as a planeswalker one time, and it was like goblins are like these little disposable spells that you just cast and whatever, and and they made one like a main character. They made a planeswalker goblin at one point, and I love it when people do stuff like that, like take this tiny little creature and just like elevate it up to this position that it should probably not be in.
I love that also, partly because it's fun as a player to imagine that happening to your character, but also because it is a fun way to point out the imbalances in a game system. Not to say, oh, this makes the game bad, but to say like, oh, this gives the game some interesting texture. And really quickly, one of the things I want to cover while we talk about the Lizard Man is this fascinating concept that I read about while researching this episode. In 1982, a scientist named Dale Russell, purely as a thought experiment, he was not ever proposing that these creatures existed, but he wanted to like kind of work through what would be required and what they would be like. He proposed what he referred to as the dinosauroid.
Okay.
And he took them as an evolution of a specific dinosaur named the Troodontid, which, think of a raptor from Jurassic Park, basically.
Okay.
They had the right encephalization quotient, which is basically the ratio of like brain mass to body mass. And they had a brain case that was on par with the size of a human brain case.
Sorry.
And
I don't know that term, brain case. And I was just imagining like...
Were you imagining like a bowling ball bag? But it was
yes. Just like a pelican case. Like, oh, it's a really nice brain case you got there.
Yeah, totally. Troodontids also had apparently semi-manipulative fingers, like digits on their, what I will, for lack of a better term, call hands. They also had binocular vision.
I don't like this at all.
And his theory is that if a dinosauroid, like a humanoid but a reptile, had evolved from these, they might have had language that sounded like bird song, because this is fairly new into the era of openly associating birds as being evolved from dinosaurs. So the idea that there would be these creatures that were more or less human-sized, had the right ratio of brain size to body size, and language sounding like birds.
Nope.
Ooh, super fascinating.
I'm out. I don't like these.
I found it really fascinating, and I am going to definitely steal them for a D&D game at some point.
This is a thing of nightmares. I don't want to think about these things existing.
That's fair. I want to think about these things existing because I'm weird. I really do want to use them in a book, though, sometime. Do you want me to dive into Georgia?
Yeah, let's get our Sasquatch on.
When I set out to find Georgia cryptids, and you suggested Bigfoot or Sasquatch, then my first thought was, how many sightings of Sasquatch can there be in Georgia? And it turns out the answer is a lot.
Sure. They got
So,
mountains.
yeah, right. They come from all over though. And for each of the sightings that I'll talk about, I specifically relate them to how far they are from.
Wait. I got to cut you off. You said they come from all over. Is there an underwater squatch? Is there a scuba squatch? Maybe is there a lake squatch?
There's not a lake squatch to my knowledge, but that only means that we need to go find one now.
I want there to be one, and it can fight that evil dinosaur creature that you described in the last talk.
The dinosauroid is our friend. Don't get in the dinosauroid's way because he has semi-manipulative fingers / digits, and he will lock you in a room.
I don't want that.
Just to extend the nightmare. So we always, when we're talking about these, I always really, for whatever reason, get into the origin of the words for these. Mm-hmm. Bigfoot was originally the nickname of a chief of the Wyandot tribe, who are an Iroquoian-speaking tribe from the Great Lakes region. We've talked about a lot of Iroquoian-speaking tribes in the course of talking about other legends. And later, there was also the nickname for a Lakota chief who was killed at the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890 in the state of South Dakota. Sasquatch is also a term for them, and that's borrowed from the Halkomelem language, which is spoken by several different Pacific Northwestern tribes. Just to make sure everybody knows what it is, Bigfoot or Sasquatch is a hominid or primate of great height and broad build, covered in hair or fur, otherwise described as an ape man or a hairy humanoid.
Like a giant chaka.
Yes.
Sorry.
And I mentioned those origins of the term also because Bigfoots and Sasquatches are closely associated with the Pacific Northwest, particularly since the Patterson-Gimlin film. It was released in 1967. Patterson and Gimlin said they filmed it in the woods in Northern California in 1967, and that they have no idea what they caught on camera other than that it was a Bigfoot. There's been a lot of controversy around this film in the over 50 years since it was released, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying most of us think of Bigfoot as being a Pacific Northwest creature, but the same or similar beings are described in cultures and places all over the world. You've got the Yeti of the Himalayas. You've got creatures like this everywhere in the world. And Bigfoot seen in Georgia as recently as 2019. So in May of 2019, my hat is off. So you're
saying there's a chance.
I'm saying there's a chance. My hat is off to you for telling me that there was a sighting as recently as 2019, by the way. In May of 2019, a man who has refused to give his name ever since told the Charlotte Observer, the same paper that we talked about in the Brown Mountain Lights episode, that he saw a 7 to 8 foot tall Sasquatch in the Rich Mountain Wilderness area along Highway 515 near Cherry Log, Georgia, between Ellijay and Blue Ridge, Georgia, 2 towns. And to put that in terms of DragonCon, that is an hour and 20 minutes north of the Marriott Marquis, which is where the American Sci-Fi Classics track meeting room is. So if this were normal DragonCon, we would be an hour and 20 minutes away from the spot where this happened.
And we'd do a road trip.
It would be very feasible. So the man said, quote, "My own wife didn't believe me, I guess. It wasn't no bear. It was walking straight up like a human with long arms, swinging back and forth like a monkey. I saw it on the side of the road. It took 5 steps and was gone in the woods." End quote. He does not specify whether those 5 steps were from the side of the road into the adjacent woods or whether it crossed the road into the woods in 5 steps. And I prefer that it crossed the road because that would be amazing and terrifying. And I find Bigfoot terrifying. So in the same way that you do not like Dinosauroid and are like, there is no way that thing is our friend, there is no way Bigfoot is our friend. I am sorry.
I beg to differ.
And fair enough. You can have your monster and I'll have mine. And then they'll fight. But I also loved this final quote from him. "I wasn't getting out of the truck and I wasn't going to go into the woods looking for it." And I'm like, yeah, hard same, my friend.
So this person didn't give a name and hasn't given any follow-ups, right?
He apparently has spoken to several media outlets and to a couple of research organizations and resolutely refuses to allow his name to be used because he's worried that he'll be made fun of.
This is a lizard man. This is a lizard man with a cell phone snitching on Bigfoot, trying to get the heat off of him and put it on Bigfoot.
You know it. But no, I always find instances of that really compelling though. When somebody could have made money off of this.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly, there are people who have offered him money to come to make a public statement.
Sure.
And he has refused everything.
It lends credence to it. It certainly lends credence to the statements.
Yeah, he has not in any way sought to gain by sharing this story. Now, the Rich Mountain Wilderness area is huge. It's a great big wilderness preserve just north of Atlanta. So it's kind of exactly the right setting for them. And it's like tucked just up against the bottom of the Appalachian Mountains. So it's an even better setting for them. But there are a bunch of other relatively recent sightings in Georgia, including a Bigfoot spotted spying on a family as they smoked a hog.
Which was just me. That was just me.
I was like,
hey, you gonna break me off some?
I feel like we learn a lot about this family and about Bigfoot from that sighting. You know,
I want in.
Why not? January 2017, though, in Ideal, Georgia, which is exactly 2 hours south of the Marriott Marquis.
Ideal,
you know.
What'd you name your town? Perfection.
We started to make a name and we said, let's come up with some ideal names. And then somebody said, wait a minute. So he's spying on them while they're smoking a hog in January 2017. Mm-hmm. A month before that, in December of 2016, a couple driving through Rockmart, Georgia, which is about an hour west of the Marriott Marquis, saw an 8-foot-tall orange and reddish-brown hairy humanoid standing between two trees, politely waiting for them to pass so that it could cross the road. The wife and the couple, they were a man and a woman, and the wife and the couple said that as they drove past and they saw this creature standing there, she turned in her seat to look at it as they went by, and it turned to watch them go by and acknowledged their presence. And then as soon as they were gone, it stepped across the road.
Acknowledged everybody. Wink. Top of the morning to you.
I feel like I may not be a big fan of Bigfoot, but I am really glad that somebody's teaching Bigfoot road safety. I'm glad that somebody taught it to look both ways before crossing the street.
Sure.
But then one of the most compelling cases noted by the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization is...
Which, of course, is a thing.
Definitely a thing. That's from August of 2016 near Adel, Georgia, which is 3 hours south of the Marriott Marquis, just north of Valdosta.
Not ideal. Not
ideal. It's an hour past ideal. Which I think tells you everything you need to know about it.
And we're done. Sorry.
And in that instance, there was a family that reported multiple instances of knocking and whistling, which are really common to modern Bigfoot lore and
catcalling.
Yeah, basically not catcalling in that they were into him, but
like the old Tom and Jerry, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
his eyes turn into hearts and
maybe that's what happened. I don't know. In most
heard y'all got that smoked hog.
My smoked hog brings all the yowies to the yard. I don't know.
He's just out there squatching around.
Just doing his thing, looking for another picnic. He just drifts from...
What is a Yogi Bear?
Yogi Bear was. Maybe Yogi Bear was coded Sasquatch lore.
Hey, Chaka. We're going to go get a delicious smoked hog.
But so knocking is usually means like knocking rocks or something against a tree trunk to make a really loud noise, and the whistling is like whistles and chirps and stuff. And in modern Bigfoot lore, supposedly these are ways that they try to warn off intruders or communicate with each other. So this family said they had a bunch of sightings. I love this part. They have one video taken by a trail cam of a 6-foot-long hairy arm and hand extending from behind a bush, picking up a possum, yanking the possum back behind the bushes, and then 20 minutes later, reaching back out and setting the unharmed possum back down on the ground so that the possum shivers and runs away.
What? Something like this? Very deliberate. Very, very deliberate.
It is a little, shall we say, staged. But I also kind of love the idea that Sasquatch is real bored in the middle of the night, and he's just hanging out in these people's yard trying to make cat videos because he's heard those are popular on the internet. But he doesn't have a cat. He's just in the wilds of Adel, Georgia. And so the best he can do is a possum. I just really love that story. I don't know.
I mean, listen, if I ever come across a trail cam, I'm not going to lie. I mess with it. I decidedly pose when I see trail cam because I know that someone is going to come back for their camera to review their footage, and they're going to be like, this ding dong. So all I'm saying is I get it. You see a trail cam, you want to mess with it, but you don't want your face seen. You drag a possum across the front, and you know that they're going to wonder what it was.
Yeah, why not?
Really identifying with Squatch during these stories.
This is revolting. But I went looking for, like, has there ever been a Sasquatch sighting in Atlanta? Because it's DragonCon. But there have not been. But there have been in a bunch of counties that touch Fulton County, that border on it. Cherokee County, Gwinnett, Bartow, Cobb, Douglas, and Carroll counties all have had sightings in the last few years. So if you're in the Atlanta area and you're curious to learn more, check out Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum, which is on State Highway 515, right around where that first sighting we talked about from May 2019 happened.
Yeah.
That puts it an hour and 22 minutes north of the Marriott Marquis.
That's ideal.
It's not ideal, but it is ideal. And it's open 7 days a week. Kids get a discount. Active military get in free. And it sounds, honestly, like it's a fantastic time.
Yeah, that's great. I'd do that. So I'll take the sci-fi examples.
Go for it.
Of course, you said that you don't believe that Bigfoot want to be our friend, but Harry and the Hendersons tells me otherwise. 1987, family-friendly movie, absolute smash, made $50 million at the box office on a $10 million budget.
That's a huge profit margin.
In 1987.
A $10 million budget in 1987 was pretty impressive.
So this was a regular repeat rental in my house growing up. I can't tell you how many times I watched Harry and the Hendersons. I love that movie.
Wow.
But what I didn't know was that there was a spin-off TV show. Were you aware of that?
Yes, because it was a syndicated show.
Okay.
It played on our local independent station before that became the Fox station in the late 80s. And it played on like Saturday afternoons or something, basically between like Small Wonder and something else,
It ran for 72 episodes.
That's a lot. That's like 6 seasons.
It's a lot.
It's almost 4 seasons.
Significant amount of work went into that show, which I'm like, I don't know what that says about me that I didn't know about it. But also in 1987, there was a family-friendly, we'll call wood booger, boogeyman of the woods. There was a family-friendly wood booger flick called Cry Wilderness. Some kids somewhere wanted to see Harry and the Hendersons wound up with this absolutely poor substitute.
Is this bargain basement Harry and the Hendersons?
Yeah. Variety magazine called it one of the worst movies ever made.
Ooh.
It was in Mystery Science Theater in season 11, episode 2. So you can catch it. I just
realized that I have now seen this movie. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, it is not a good movie. Oh. No, it tries to be like 7 different movies at once, and it fails at all of them.
So apparently it was originally supposed to be like a horror movie. And the producer came back to the scriptwriter and said, no. I need you to take out anything that could possibly be construed as an adult element. He was like, that doesn't really leave me with much. He goes, I don't care. He was like, no, this is a movie about nothing. And the producers were like, we don't care. That's what we want. So it's a total lemon.
Everything about it is bad. I just want to note that. The special effects are bad. The script is bad. The lighting is bad. The filming is bad. Everything is bad.
Just like, let's talk about another bad movie. Boggy Creek 2, The Legend Continues, which is not actually the second, as the name would have you think, but the third movie in a series of 5 Sasquatch-themed creature features.
Oh my God. I had no idea there were that many boggy creeks.
This one had to do with Bigfoot and its progeny and trying to save child Bigfoot.
Okay.
The series has spanned from 1972 to its most recent entry in 2011.
2011?
And I credit that to it being number 2, being the most popular, obviously, because we're talking about it. because we know about it because of Mystery Science Theater, which, yeah, season 10, episode 6. So I think probably somebody saw it and was like, we should make another one. The timing is right.
That's really funny. There have actually been several people who had failed independent film projects that got picked up by MST3K who then went on to make more movies because they all of a sudden had a little interest.
Sure. Absolutely. I love the schlocky, independent, poorly produced, but have a big heart movies.
And actually, Boggy Creek 2 and Cry Wilderness are two of my favorite MST3Ks of all time. MST3K's treatment of Cry Wilderness is one of the funniest MST3Ks ever written. It is dense with jokes. It's one of those MST3Ks that you keep having to pause because you're still laughing at the last joke when they make the next joke, and so you missed it.
Right. You're like, I don't want to miss anything. Rewind.
Yeah.
The $6 Million Man did a 2-part episode about Bigfoot in 1976, where Bigfoot is actually found out to be a robot built by aliens to protect them from interlopers.
So that's really funny. And part of what I find funny about that is that there actually are people who try to connect Bigfoot to UFOs. And there are a ton of reported UFO sightings that involve Bigfoots and Bigfoot sightings that involve UFOs.
This actually got novelized. It got turned into a book. It was so popular that they did a novelization of this 2-part episode.
I know it doesn't make great radio, but I just had to close my eyes and sit in stunned silence for a moment. That is insane.
So basically, somebody got paid to write that. Twice. Once for the episode and once for the book.
If you go to the American Sci-Fi Classics Facebook page or YouTube channel, you will see that one of the quarantine panels that the track did over the summer was a readings from novelizations of classic sci-fi movies. And if they do that again next year, I am already calling dibs on the $6 Million Man Sasquatch episode novelization as what I will read.
Speaking of books.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that a friend of mine, Patrick C. Green, he's a really great writer out of Western North Carolina. He has a bunch of very successful novels. He mostly writes horror, but he has a novel called Progeny that is specifically a Sasquatch novel, and it has a ton of really good reviews on Amazon, and people who read it really, really enjoy it. Just give him a shout out.
And we will note specifically the X-Files did not do a Bigfoot episode.
Yeah, since we kind of style ourselves as sort of the X-Files of the Carolinas, it's really worth noting they never went there, and I'm really surprised.
What I could find online was that they didn't want to. They felt like it was expected, so they didn't want to do it.
That makes sense. I can see that.
So I get that.
I guess
feel
the
that way.
Closest they got was the Jersey Devil episode from season 1.
Well, they did that one where the person could like blend in with the trees. Was that the same one? Is that the same one as the Jersey Devil episode?
I think that was the Jersey Devil episode, yeah.
Okay. Which in and of itself is a great legend. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Same here. I just want to say thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of DragonCon Goes Virtual. Thanks for watching the American Sci-Fi Classics track. And thanks for listening to our episode.
We hope you like it. If you did, consider subscribing to our podcast, Arcane Carolinas. We're available through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you consume podcasts. While we hope you liked it, if you didn't, we still want to hear from you. Tell us what you think we could do better. Email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. Check us out on the web, www.arcanecarolinas.com. And don't forget, we have swag specifically for you, DragonCon attendees. All you need to do is email us, tell us that you want some, and we will get it in the mail to you free of charge.
Yeah. And normally panels wrap with everybody reminding everybody of where to find them online, things like that. So I'm just going to say again, you can find me at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com. I'm a writer. I won the 2020 Manly Wade Wellman Award for my novel A Fallen Autumn. I write science fiction and urban fantasy. And a boxed set of my first urban fantasy series, The Withrow Chronicles, just got released by Falstaff Books the week before DragonCon.
Very cool. And I'm Charlie Mushaw, have none of those credentials, and just hope that you like and subscribe Arcane Carolinas.
And folks can find us on Facebook also, right?
Yes. So if you go to arcanecarolinas.com, it's sort of our web portal. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. There's going to be photo albums posted to both for each of our episodes. So sort of source materials, and you can see cool behind the scenes stuff. I don't want to give too much away, but sometimes we do little chemistry projects to test the science behind legends and lore. Specifically, I'm referencing the Devil's Tramping Ground. So check that out. I hope you like it.
It was a great episode. Okay. Well, I think that probably puts us right out of time.
All right. Nighty night, sleep tight. Don't let the lizard people bite. I don't know.
That works.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards. I'm going to end up redoing this entire thing, aren't I? Yes, I am.